Good afternoon. I am sorry that I stand between you and a beer right now. And hopefully this will go quickly, and then we can all be free. So first, I just want to start off by saying that if anybody wants to contact me afterwards, of course, I'll stay for a little bit. But you can find me on LinkedIn if you type in Bob Fish and the word Biggby. Same with Facebook. And my email address is bob@biggby.com. Biggby is spelled with 2 G's, just so you know. And then just a few thanks, certainly to Henry for inviting me to the forum. It's my first time. It's certainly just excellent. My wife, Michelle, who makes a great partner. My business partner, Mike McFall, and of course the 5,000 people that work inside Biggby Nation. They really make it all possible. I just want to say that Colombian hospitality is unparalleled. I happen to be the guest of Cafe Grania La Esperanza. Sorry, my Spanish is not very good. And just quite amazing and so appreciative. My topic today is about franchise expansion and growth in the coffee sector. And even though it's about franchising, if there's a producer in the room, I just want to say many blessings to producers. And I think you should hang in for the talk because there's a little bit about you here too in the end. And I'm going to just take you on a quick journey. I have no slides. I just prefer people listen to the words. But I'll take you on a journey, sort of just a little bit about my business, a little bit about franchising, a little bit about the idea of scale, and finally, how to create change in our industry, positive change. So let me take a drink of water. I'm going to do all that in less than 25 minutes. So hopefully you'll hang in there with me. I'm going to read my text, and so I apologize for that, but I do want to get the words exactly right. So if you'll indulge me, I'll just go ahead and get started. So the thing to know about franchising is this. If we look at the most successful food service concepts in the world, they all use the franchise business model. It doesn't really matter the segment. So, if we're talking about hamburgers, we know that there's McDonald's, there's Burger King, and there's Wendy's. Those are all franchise concepts. If we're talking about pizza, there's Domino's, Pizza Hut, Little Caesars. Those are all franchise concepts. If we're talking about sandwiches, there's Subway, there's Jimmy John's, and Firehouse. Those are all franchise concepts. There is almost always a franchise concept at the top 3, if not all top 3 being franchise concepts. And there's great reason for that. Now, to me, there's no doubt that the system for franchising a coffee concept is prevalent too, particularly in the United States. So we have Starbucks as our leader, but they are not a franchise concept, which really disappoints me. But I don't think that will last forever. But there are plenty that are in the franchise system, including places like Dunkin' Donuts or Dutch Brothers or Scooters, and of course, a concept like ours, Biggby Coffee. So once again, my name is Bob Fish, and I'm co-CEO and co-founder of a franchise retail coffee concept called Biggby Coffee. We began in East Lansing, Michigan in 1995. My business partner, Mike McFall, and I opened a second location in 1997, and with just 2 locations, we began to franchise in 1999. Today, we have 300 locations. I know it was just introduced as 280, but if I go away for a week, we seem to have more locations. And so this week, we have 302 locations, and not actually 300. We operate in 13 states, and we also operate in Indonesia and Singapore. We have another 150 franchisees coming, so we have signed contracts for another 115, and that means that we will be at about 450, 500 units in just 2 more years. So just to give you an idea about the scale of our company, our revenues will be approximately 250,000, or excuse me, no, that's too low, 250 million by the end of this year. Our current growth rate is somewhere between 20 and 25% per year. Our cafe business was founded on this belief right here, that we exist to love people. And our purpose for Biggby Coffee is to support you in building a life you love. Our vision is to improve workplace culture. Our culture centers around loving and caring about people and relationships. We are conscious capitalists, and that means that we value all stakeholders that revolve around our business in our decision making. It also means that we work towards a higher purpose. Our management system that we use is called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, otherwise known as EOS, created by a gentleman named Gino Wickman, and is really good for entrepreneurial businesses to operate with. Franchising, by the way, is how we scaled our business. And there's no doubt that the franchise model will dominate retail coffee segment in the future, to the chagrin of some, I know. For those that are not sure, I just do want to give you a pure definition of franchising. And there's an organization called the International Franchise Association, and this is their definition. Franchising is a method of distributing products or services. This involves a franchisor who establishes the brand's trademark, business system, and a franchisee who pays royalty, an initial fee, and the right to do business under the franchise trademark and system. The contract that binds the two parties is called a franchise, but that term more commonly refers to the actual business that the franchise operates. At its core, franchising is about the franchisor's brand value, how the franchisor supports its franchisees, and how the franchisee meets its obligations to deliver the products and services to the system's brand standards. And most importantly, franchising is about the relationship that the franchisor has with the franchisee. Now, clearly, I'm really biased on the idea of franchising, but I think it's one of the most beautiful business models that are out there. And the typical reasons given why franchising is good are these. So generally, the benefits to the franchisor is that it's a business model that can expand quicker than organic growth. It is a business model that does not require you to give up equity, and it's a business model that is less capital intensive. For the franchisee, it's about investing in a proven business model with a track record, and then of course, there's a statistically higher business survival rate than a typical independent operator. And lastly, that there's ongoing support and training. Now, those are the typical reasons given for franchising or why franchising is good. But I think franchising is great and wonderful. And I have 7 reasons why I think that are never really talked about. So first is that franchising is sharing. So in other words, my business partner and I created a good and profitable business model in Biggby Coffee. But instead of keeping it all to ourselves, for ourselves, we shared it with others. And so franchising is about sharing. 2, franchising is the true democratization and distribution of wealth in business. By sharing our concept, others have been able to build multi-generational wealth in all parts of the country and world without bias. So small towns, big towns, and cities alike. Typically, wealth creation is hoarded by the creator, and it ends up in private equity, or it ends up in a publicly traded company. And even though a publicly traded company has the appearance of wealth being widely distributed, I think we all know that it's typically the already rich and institutions that benefit. In other words, my partner and I, by franchising, provided access to a business model that with just a small investment has created multi-generational wealth in people and places that could never have been imagined. So franchising is a great democratizer of wealth. Third, franchising is a master at the distribution of learned knowledge. In other words, with the franchising model, you have an ecosystem of independent business owners, minds that are connected by shared values, shared goals, and the brand. Each franchisee sharing information vertically and horizontally, inward, outward, coast to coast, and in a small town. It's a great distribution knowledge mechanism. Fourth, franchising is a master, too, of decentralized thinking. In a typical corporate environment, ideas and thoughts are centralized at the corporate office. In the franchising, ideas and thoughts are decentralized and not geographically bound. In most successful franchise systems, many of the best ideas have come from the franchisee, not the franchisor. 5, franchising is a tribe. In other words, when you are in a franchise system, you're part of a group of like-minded people, and although you own your own business, you have comfort in knowing there are others out there with you, building and growing the brand. You're never alone. 6, franchising ensures that the entrepreneurial spirit lives on. In a typical corporation, the entrepreneurial spirit often rests with the founder. And as the business grows, or if the founder is no longer part of the business, the entrepreneurial spirit will die. In franchising, that entrepreneurial spirit is reborn with each new franchisee and franchise location. This is often referred to as intrapreneurship and is a definitive competitive advantage. And last, franchising provides focus. And I think this one might be the most important one altogether. Excuse me. Franchising provides focus. A focus not just on core principles of the business, but on survivability of the concept. There's an intense focus and effort on finding or creating a market, otherwise known as customers, and in turn converting those customers into fans or long-term and sustainable business, otherwise known as profit. And this is often an area where an independent operator fails. So franchising provides an enormous amount of focus. So I want to transition here to the idea of scale. So the thing I love about the franchise model is that it builds scale. Now, scaling a business or building scale might sound a little over-capitalistic or maybe even greedy. And in the wrong hands or with the wrong intent, it can certainly be. But in the right hands, there are clear benefits to scale. The first benefit is that you can simply be seen. So in our case, for example, we serve 35 million cups of coffee a year. That's an enormous audience to be seen by. At scale, you have visibility through things like national media and, of course, industry, and you have reach. In other words, through marketing and advertising. The second benefit of scale is that you have resources, money for development, time and talent for creativity, and access, meaning that when you call or email somebody, you definitely get an answer. The third benefit is that you have an implied perpetuity of relationship. In other words, the business is presumptively stable at scale. And fourth, and this could be the most important, the benefit of scale is that you can create more than impact. And we talk a lot about impact in the coffee business. But instead of just impact, you can create systemic change. So many of us want to have an impact. And let's use the relationship between producer and roaster as an example. We as buyers want to buy in an ethical way, in a way that treats the producer in a fair economic manner. Well, for a roaster buying from a producer at a few thousand kilos, that might have a positive impact on one or two or a few producers, which is good, but it's with relatively low visibility. But for a roaster buying millions of kilos, that takes the idea of positive impact and has the potential to create positive systemic change. Systemic change is impact, but with high visibility. In other words, high visibility is the change agent itself. So many of us want to have an impact on this world, and that's wonderful, but without scale, there may be impact only for a few. With scale, there can be multi-generational change for many. Not only can it create permanent and multi-generational change for many people, but it can begin to improve the systems and governance in which they operate. And I think that that's really important. So scale takes something that we would call impact and converts it to systemic change. And that's what we're up to. So I have a logo up here that's called Biggby Coffee, and I have one that's called One Big Island Space. And you can find Biggby Coffee at biggbycoffee.com, and you can find One Big Island Space at onebiguislandspace.com, with 2 G's in both cases. But I want to tell you what we're up to, and this is really for the producers at One Big Island Space. So first, I want to discuss what our name is about, because it's a little unusual. You know, the first astronauts that went into space, they looked on Earth and they saw this big blue-green floating ball in space. And when they looked down, they realized you couldn't see countries or borders. You just saw one big, beautiful world. And we found inspiration in that. And we've always believed that we are one Earth with one people, that granted might have different cultures and languages and religions, but fundamentally we all want the same thing: safety, security, food, clothing, shelter, health, and something for the next generation. We believe we are just one human team. That's our perspective. One Big Island in Space is an organization run by my wife, Michelle, and I, and we've accepted the mission of Biggby Coffee to be 50% farm direct by 2023 and 100% farm direct by 2028. Now, our definition of farm direct is establishing a long-term, perpetual relationship with grower or producer that we purchase coffee from. We look for relationships with producers that are treating people right, and that's something beyond fair trade, treating the planet right, something beyond USDA organic, and investing in their community. We are not looking to convert producers to these practices. We are looking to support those already exercising those practices. Although we do not mind the marketing labels of USDA Organic or Fair Trade or Rainforest Alliance, we don't rely on them. We understand there's real economic cost to those. We verify with boots on the ground, and that takes multiple visits. In those visits, we take the time to develop a relationship and understanding of the vision of the producer. We also share our vision, and we look to support theirs and hope that they will support ours too. Our goal is an equitable relationship where the producer power structure is equal and where the social and economic impact is mutually beneficial. We believe there are 2 fundamental threats to the production of coffee. One is climate change, and the other is simply the commodities marketplace, or the C contract. Between these 2 threats, climate change might be the easiest to identify and see. It is undeniable that it is here and having a negative impact on all of us. Our obligation to climate change is to acknowledge it and to speak about it to all constituencies up and down the coffee chain, from root to cup, or from grower to customer. Our second obligation is to support those producers already doing the right thing by the planet through methodology and agronomy. Our third obligation is to propagate the farming techniques that are having a positive impact on climate change. And our last obligation is to pay appropriately for it. Supporting those doing the right thing by the planet means economic support, which is not charity, but paying the appropriate price for the cost of not continuing to damage this great planet of ours, to protect the soil biome, to prevent erosion, to be shade grown, to plant more trees, to conserve water, to compost, and to protect and recreate the indigenous ecosystem. But this all takes an investment that can't be ignored and must be compensated for. Now, the more complicated one is the threat from global commoditization. And here's why. When you commoditize a product, you deny the very uniqueness and individuality of a farmed agricultural product, which in of itself is bad. But what really happens is that you end up commoditizing the people that produce that product as well. When we commoditize a product into interchangeable parts and we push the people that produce that product into a cloud of invisibility, it allows for us all to easily let go of our natural tendencies of care and love of people, and ultimately we can become indifferent. And the minute that happens, we are corrupt, and the wake of invisible and unpaid-for costs to our society and planet are infinite. Globally commoditizing a product creates a lack of economic reality as well, and I've heard many speakers speak to this. After all, the cost of producing coffee at a farm in Kenya has nothing to do with the cost of producing coffee in Nicaragua. The fact that Brazil has a bumper crop or a frost and a shortage has nothing to do with the cost of producing coffee in Vietnam. Each producer in each country has a different set of variables that influence the cost of production. But we've lost that. I can't tell you how many farms that we have been to that do not know or understand or include the total cost of production. And why should they? It doesn't matter. The price is a function of the seed contract, not their labor inputs, not their fertilizer costs, not their farm management methods, or the education it takes to get there, not their investment in third-party certifications, and not their investments in their worker and broader community. If there's one thing that the commodity marketplace has taught us, it is that costs don't matter to the marketplace. The consequence, by the way, of that kind of thinking discourages investment by the farmer, producer. It discourages investment in people, farm workers, and whether they have a livable wage or whether they have shelter, food, education, basic dignity, not to mention a future for the next generation. The consequence of that kind of thinking creates an expectation for treating the planet right and all the investments and certifications that go along with it, but without paying for it. The consequences of that kind of thinking creates a human indifference and a lack of care for others, whether that be for the producer or the local community as a whole. So, and I'm almost done, so I appreciate you hanging in there with me. So, what is the commitment of one big island in space? There are 7. One is to be there at the farm with the people. Not once, like farm pornography, but a lifetime of visits, like family. 2, to create perpetual and forever long-term relationships that allow for a producer to confidently make future investments. 3, to be transparent in knowledge and price and connect each of our producers with each other. 4, to create equitable monetary and social relationships with producers that allow them to grow and are mutually beneficial to both us and them. 5, to understand the absolute true and complete cost of production and pay accordingly. 6, to create what we call a full circle and ensure the producer meets the end user consumer. Too much coffee is sold into a void where a producer never knows where it goes and does not realize the happiness that it brings to others. And last, number 7, to teach and educate our consumer by putting a name, a face, and a place and a story to every one of the coffees we serve. Scale is the thing that's allowing us to do this. Franchising is the thing that's allowing us to do this. One big island in space is here to create change in a system that was born in a time of colonialism, when the consequences of mistreating the planet or the people or the communities was zero consequences. And we're all paying for it now. But let's do one thing. Let's do this. Let's listen. Let's learn, let's lead, and let's create change that brings the human team together on this one big, beautiful planet of ours. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have time for a few questions, if anyone has.
Sí, aló. Hola, buenas tardes. Oh, excuse me, in Spanish.
Yes.
Aló. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es John Monroy, soy representante de Café Loma Verde, una marca local de acá de Colombia. Llevamos 18 años con nuestro modelo de tienda de café, pero igual soy cultivador cafetero de como de quinta o sexta generación en el departamento de Santander, Colombia, nororiente de Colombia. Entonces, manejamos el modelo de tiendas de café. Hemos ido avanzando en el conocimiento de llevar del grano a la taza. De acuerdo a este modelo que ustedes manejan, ¿cuál cree usted que es el valor o el porcentaje justo que manejan ustedes para que del 100% del valor de la taza de café, cuánto le corresponde a ese cultivador que les provee la materia prima? ¿En qué porcentaje? ¿Un 5, un 10 o un 20? Si tienen estimado cuál es ese porcentaje justo que le corresponde a quien produce la materia prima. Gracias.
Okay, well, those were a lot of words. So, Juan, and he's multi-generational farming, also owns cafes, really just wants to know, okay, on this model, what is the fair percentage of profitability that the farm should earn? And I don't know why it would be any different from the percentage that I expect to earn in my business, right? So, my expectations for my business is somewhere between 10, 15, and 20%. And it changes depending on, you know, how I'm growing, what investments I'm making, and so on and so forth. So, but no, any business should be making at least 10%, if not 15, profit.
Hello. I'm gonna be quick. With my brother, we have three coffee shops that are our own. And last year we started with a franchise, and we opened three franchise so far. Mm-hmm. But my question for you is, right now we're in the point if we should keep doing franchise, or if we keep doing opening our own coffee shops. What would you recommend?
Right. So I assume everybody heard that question, but the one thing to understand about franchising is, so of course, you know, when I first opened, I opened my first coffee shop, I opened a second coffee shop, and then I began franchising. When I began franchising, the one thing that I realized is that I was no longer a coffee businessman, I was a franchise businessman. And so this is something that you have to come to terms with for yourself. It doesn't mean that I'm not in the coffee business, of course, but my business model, my customer changed, right? So when you're in the coffee shop business, you're serving customers a cup of coffee. When you're in the franchise business, you are serving franchise business owners. You know, having 2 or 3 franchises is really early in the game. And I think you have to get to about 20 units to begin to really feel like you might be earning an appropriate income on that franchising model. And then from that point forward, it just gets better and better and better. I love the franchise model, not just because I get to be in an industry that I love, which is the coffee industry, but in the end, we are creating wealth for others, right? We're taking the knowledge and the mistakes, the learnings that we had over time, and we're letting people have a different starting point, a better advantage in surviving as a business and a business model. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, Bob.
Yes.
My name is Josh from Higher Grounds Trading Company in Michigan, and thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about in that franchise environment, especially with a business like yours that has so much intention behind creating a certain kind of space and culture within it. As you're growing and you have these new folks that want to come on and start being a part of the business, how do you vet them to make sure that they're going to be the right partner? And then once they're in, and I don't mean financial reasons, I'm more interested in knowing that they're the right kind of partner for the value set. But then once they're in, what sort of continual activities occur to ensure that your values are being carried out?
Yeah, so I think the way you attract the right partners is to wear your culture on your sleeve, right? And the more extreme it is, the better, because the more extreme it is, the more people will self-select in and self-select out, right? So it's a mission for us to make the word love as ubiquitous as the word profitable in business. And that's a little hippie in some ways, but we let all that hippiness hang out as much as we can. And if you're the type of person that's not into loving and caring about people, we are hoping that you don't self-select in to begin with. And if you are, we put our arms around you and we welcome you. We think as a business model that is a business model that is very strong and will create change in our world.
That's all we have time for today.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sure if anyone has any questions, Bob might be able to answer them afterwards. But yeah, please can we give a big round of applause for the final speaker of today.